What's up, future husbands and wives? And welcome to the Dating Life Podcast. I'm Nate J. Clark, your Latter-day Saint dating coach, and I'm here to talk dating on the road to eternal marriage. Ganae, welcome back. So glad to have you. How are you doing?
Thank you. I'm doing so good. I'm doing really great. So I'm excited to be here today. Definitely feel talky today. So we'll have a lot of story time and fun time, I think.
Awesome. And I'm excited because this is the first time that we've had a return guest and kind of like a continuation of the story. And so I think it's going to be fun to chat about not only kind of recapping anything that we talked about last time, but like, I guess how things have gone moving forward from that and what your thoughts have been, whether they've been different or about the same, or just to see if that had an impact at all and what the next step is. So, I'm excited. I was just reviewing our notes a little bit. One of the things that I had said I wanted to talk about at some point, and I'm sure it'll fit in with the things you have planned as well. But one of the things I had was talking about hunters and unicorns. If you remember that, there was we left our audience in suspense a little bit because that was something that I didn't explain. But hunters and unicorns, we can talk about that today. But before we do, is there anything pressing on your mind that you want to share as far as where you're at with dating? Or
I have quite a few tabs open in my brain right now of dating.
Okay.
So I could go off about anything, but actually a little review for last time. Where did we left off with the hunters and unicorns. What else did we cover? I thought I grabbed my notes. Look, I have my notes here. Turns out I grabbed the wrong note. So I looked and I was like, these aren't my dating notes. So
okay, well, yeah, I'll go ahead and give a little recap then. I just wrote down a couple of basic points that we went over. And most of these are things you said that you've kind of felt. I guess they're more of like the emotional thoughts, not necessarily the logical thoughts, right? Because those can be very different. Sometimes we're like, logically, I know this, but I feel like this. So these were like emotional thoughts that you had expressed. One was being secure when it comes to romantic relationships is scary because it's vulnerable. God promised that he'd protect me, but doesn't catch me. Being open is not safe. Happy marriage is not an option for me. And when I don't want something, it can't hurt me. Then the last one was God doesn't want me to be happy. So those were just some of the tough ones we started to talk about last time. Does that jog your memory?
Yes, absolutely. And they all, as I was listening, I was like, that's true. Oh, yes. Who said that? I agree with that. But I've been working through a few of those and these past few weeks, and I feel like I've definitely made a lot of discoveries. And as I name them and find them and release them, it's really helped me to see some of these perspectives have been really warped. And just really, I think of them as twisted. I think Satan comes in and very sneakily comes into the belief and then like warps it. And until it becomes like something completely different and very heavy and very much a block where I can't move past that. So I've been trying to develop or praying for the gift of discernment to see where those twists are, and then untwisting them. And
what a cool specific thing to pray for.
Thank you so much.
That's awesome.
It's been super well. I have it in my head a little bit. I think it's an OCD tendency, and so it makes me have a really hard time discerning between truth and error. And because with OCD, or these belief systems, they feel so real. But then when you say them out loud, it's kind of like, that doesn't quite make sense. And now I'm starting to understand, if I come across these belief systems that I say out loud and I'm like, I don't think I'd say that to anybody else. Like, I don't think that's applicable to anybody else. It's probably not applicable to me. But the adversary does like to make us think that we are the only, like, God wants everyone to be happy except for me. Like, that's how the adversary has me thinking. So I've been trying to discern between those thoughts Um, anyways, I've learned so much. But I do want to hear, yeah, I want to hear about the unicorns and hunters because now I'm also interested as well.
Bringing back the suspense. Well, it's a
Yeah.
pretty basic analogy, and like I said, I'm sure that it'll probably feel like it connects to some of the things that you wanted to share today. Um, but it goes back to an article I read about dating once in a magazine, and they talked about how um, in dating there's hunters and there's unicorns, and they talked about how hunters are the ones that are proactively looking for like a steady relationship, and unicorns kind of just want to be chased. um, but they're not necessarily looking for like a solid relationship, right? Um, and the advice that was given in this article was healthy relationships don't happen between hunters and unicorns. Healthy relationships happen between hunters and hunters. And so the article was like, stop chasing unicorns and find another hunter, and you'll be happy.
No way.
and
Wow.
and and when I first read it, I was like, I don't know if I understand that. That's kind of weird. I don't know if I agree. But the more I've studied this whole attachment theory thing, and anxious, avoidant, secure, the more I'm like, there really is something to be said for their logic with that. Because I mean, if we're talking about the avoidant side of the spectrum, it fits pretty well with their description of a unicorn. Right? But the problem is that unicorns don't actually exist. They're just people like the rest of us that instead of proactively hunting for a relationship, they just kind of like the idea of it. They kind of like the excitement of being chased, but ultimately talk themselves out of something serious right before it happens and move on to the next thrill, if that makes sense. And for me, in my story, the last girl that I was pretty serious with had some of those tendencies of, and I was told that by people that knew her really well after she ended things. They were like, yeah, she has those tendencies where she talks herself out of it last minute and kind of moves on to the next one. Um, and it was interesting because what I felt like God taught me after that experience was to value the other hunters. I had been valuing the unicorns. I had been looking for and enjoying, chasing what ran away. When in reality, the reason they're running away in the first place means that there's some stuff to work through on their side. They have an unhealthy relationship with relationships. That's why they run, and therefore
Mm.
they're not currently capable of a healthy relationship. And so once I understood that, I was like, oh, they got their own stuff to work on. And so was I still attracted to girls that might have looked like unicorns? Yeah, I was, but I no longer chased them because I kind of saw through it a little bit, and I was like, oh, yeah, a very attractive person. I can kind of tell by the way she interacts with people that I don't think we'd have a healthy relationship even if something did work out. I'm looking
Mhm.
for someone who's going to chase me back in healthy, confident ways, and I think it was that paradigm shift that really kind of opened my eyes to being a healthier dater and to like value people that I still found attractive, but they hadn't put all their eggs in that basket, if you know what I mean. It wasn't like, oh, I'm a unicorn and you know it and you're going to chase me. It was like, oh, I'm a healthy person that takes good care of myself, and that's what makes me beautiful. But I'm looking for someone else that's like that too, and I'm ready for a healthy relationship. And so that's when my wife Allison came along, and it was like, oh, we were both like, hey, like it was very like it was very reciprocal when it came to expressing interest. It wasn't like one person chasing the other. It was like we were chasing each other, and we liked it. So anyway, that's the hunter and unicorn analogy, and I feel like it keeps popping up in a lot of the conversations I'm having with people. And I know that there was some sort of connection last time with what we were talking about. and I'm trying to remember exactly what it was. I think it had to do with how you said that sometimes you feel more on the avoidant side, but it's not necessarily all the time. Sometimes you feel on the opposite end of the spectrum where it's like you're the proactive one, you're kind of hunting, but it kind of seems
Yeah.
to swing back and forth toward the extremes rather than just hanging out in the middle. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay.
But I have been practicing. That's like a pattern in my life, not just in relationships. Funny how like relationships are just a mirror or like a symbol of
Hmm.
everything else, right?
Yeah.
I have been learning to come to the middle of the pendulum or the spectrum with quite a few things in my life right now. So I
Hmm.
feel like that's pretty mirrored pretty accurately. I have found in the past with relationships that I have either been anxious or avoidant. I don't think I've really hung out in the center very much. I have figured out like where usually when that happens. So maybe I should draw a little picture.
Tell
Uh,
me. Yeah.
I have I have three categories thus far. I love this is bad. I like categorizing people. So I like
That's not
judging them and
bad.
putting them in a category. I like the organization. That's something that God's been telling me recently. God is a master organizer. Like he
Hmm.
creates by organizing many different things, and then boom, he's organized man, you know? So he organizes the chaos, and then it creates something like easy to breathe, it's simple. And so I've been trying to organize different things. So one of the things I discovered, I've tried to do this in the past, but finally this has made sense to me. I have three groups. The first one, oh, tell me time wise. Are we going to 40? Is it 45? Uh, just let me know when to stop.
um. Yeah, don't worry about it. Just
Okay.
just just go for it. The
Okay.
things you have to share, Janae, are so valuable that I'm happy to let these be longer episodes.
Because you say that to everyone. But
No, no,
thank
no.
you.
I do not. Allison and I were driving home just a little while ago, and I was like, I should probably plan for more time because Janae has a way of sharing what's on everyone's mind, but that everyone's scared to say. And so it's going to
Yeah.
help a lot of people.
Well, thank you because I definitely feel like my stuff is like just unique to me. So I'm glad if it helps people. That makes me really happy. Also, I'm sad for everybody else that they experience the same thing, but happy that we can all do it together. Misery loves company, baby. Okay, so we have three different groups, and there is a happy Mother's Day, Father's Day on the back. So sorry if there's stuff going through. The first group um, these maybe I'll call them like the people I fall in love with immediately. Like
Mm,
immediately there's chemistry, there's attraction. I'm extremely attracted to those guys. And sometimes they can be introverted, sometimes they can be extroverted. The only thing that they have in common really is that I am attracted immediately. I'm not exactly sure what that is, but that's group one, immediate
okay.
attraction. Those tend to be hot and heavy and they die out really fast. And that's usually what I have been pursuing. That's usually where I live, is in that world of
Mm,
like, I'll try to get their attention. Sometimes I'll get it for a few minutes and then it's gone, that kind of thing. And I'm like
mm,
devastated. The second group, it takes me years, maybe years to fall in love with these kinds of guys. But now maybe that I've recognized it, there have been like two men in this group. I mean, there have been other guys that I come around to as well, but these two, actually, probably half the guys I didn't like immediately, but then I kind of was like, okay, I'll give it a try. That's
mm,
group two. And then in this group, though, there have been two men that I have developed like super strong feelings for, and it's happened in an instant. Female attraction is so fickle and fun. I think it's so fun. And it's very confusing even to me. So, like, there is this one guy that I knew for, I think it was 2 years. It was like a year or two. And I had no feelings of attraction for this person whatsoever. I didn't want to be alone with this person, whatever. But I thought they were a great person. I thought they were great. And then one day we were at one of our gigs. I'm a musician part-time, and so I was at one of our gigs, and I was a little stressed. I was orchestrating everything, This guy comes over. Let's call him Joey. Go write down Joey's name so I remember. Joey comes over and he's like, "Hey, do you need help with anything?" And in that instant where he was the only guy that came over to offer help, to like see me and be like, "How can I help?" I was immediately like, now I want to kiss you. Like it was like immediate for me after like 2 years of getting to know this person. And then all of a sudden he's like, "May I help you? I see you. I'm here for you." And he was wearing a beautiful shirt. I could see his muscles. And I was like, great. Now I like you. And it was like immediate. It was so weird. Same thing happened with this other guy. And I am kind of still talking to this guy right now, this other guy. But there are these guys that like I'm not interested in, have no interest, and I'm like, oh, they're great people, and then like all of a sudden a flip, a switch will flip, and I'll be like, I am now ready. It's so weird. So that's group two.
Okay.
And then group three are these guys that I'm like, I will never be interested, and I it will never happen. So the group threeers are just like friends, and by the way, I've been learning how to have guy friends. I don't know if we talked
Hmm.
about this last time, did we? I've never
Sounds
been,
familiar.
it's never been a strength of mine because of anxiety around being having different feelings. Like when we're on the same page, it's great to have guy and girlfriends. But I think off sometimes in my past with guy friends, either they'll develop feelings for me or I'll develop feelings for them naturally, and then it makes things challenging. And so I think I've always just shied away from having guy friends so that I don't have to worry um about like where we're each at. I have, and just side note, I have had girlfriends as well, and some who have been gay and they have feelings for me and we can work through that too. But it just is way more common, obviously, with like guys. So
Hmm.
I have always been comfy with ladies, always been comfy with girls, and that's just where I live. And then I think also it's probably attributed to certain people in my life that I didn't feel had like healthy masculinity, and so I just have always shied away from it. I mean, I love boys. I've always been boy crazy. I love men, but I don't like really love men. I just like them from like a distance. So I've been
I
learning
like them over
how
there.
yeah, I'm like, you guys look great. Like, I've always called myself the best fangirl because I am a great fangirl. But if you come up close to me, I'm like, like, give me my space. And so I think, yeah. Anyways, that was
Hmm.
extra. That I've never been good about having guy friends, but I've been developing that, and now I have like a few guy friends that I talk to, and I'm like, this is kind of fun. I kind of like having guy friends too, and girlfriends. So I feel a lot healthier with that.
Cool.
And I learned recently that apparently you choose your spouse from your friend group.
That can
And
totally happen.
okay, okay. Because in my head I'm like, either they're my friend or I'm like I can't just like either they're my friend I don't have feelings for or I'm dating them. Like again, there's that spectrum where I'm like I'm either on either side. I've never been like in the middle where I'm like this is my friend and I have feelings, but it's fine, we're just friends. Like if I have feelings for them, we're gonna be dating. You know what I'm saying? Like I'm not gonna just like but now I've been learning how to be okay with that too. So I definitely think I've just been a person who's like all in or all out. I've never been in the middle of the spectrum.
Hmm.
Okay, anyways, that got sidetracked. But those are my three groups. The ones that I like immediately, the ones that develop over time, who knows how long, and then the ones that it's like never gonna happen.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. Couple of thoughts. You talked about balance for a minute, kind of right before you went into your three different groups. And a couple of thoughts there is that I really do think that God is like, I think balance is his way of doing things. I think it's always his invitation. I think he's always kind of beckoning like to balance. And I think that the adversary is always beckoning to the extremes. If you think about
Mm.
the temptations of the world, they're all toward the extreme. If you're going to do something, you have to be the best, which is not true at all. You have to be the best in order to like be happy, right? I used to think that with running. I was really into running in middle school and high school. If I'm gonna be a runner, I have to like win a gold medal at the Olympics to be the best. and to be happy. And it's like, that's not true. I can run just because it feels good and it keeps me healthy and I can enjoy it and that can make me happy. You know what I mean? I feel like there's a lot of different ways that could go, but I thought that point was worth bringing up, that um, that I feel like that's so often the case, is the temptation is toward an extreme. And oftentimes extremes are more enticing, right? Let's face it. The thrill of hunting a unicorn could be more enticing than like two people like, pursuing each other. Because there's higher highs and potentially lower lows. And so there's more of a roller coaster ride.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people can get addicted to that and think that a balanced, secure way of doing things is boring. But ultimately, it's not that it's boring. It's that the joys are deeper, less obvious joys until you get there. They're deeper, more substantial, more lasting joys.
Mm.
And there's still highs and there's still lows, but they're just not as extreme. And so that was the first thought. And then as you were talking about, either having like your friends or the people you're dating, and where you've been with that in the past, you described me. Like, I was definitely that way for a long time. And it wasn't that I couldn't have friends that were girls. I did, very close friends like you and a couple other friends that that I'm good friends with. But I always had to like make sure and categorize that before I proceeded. And my mind was never really open to the possibility of becoming really close friends and then like romantic feelings, developing. And that's, like I said, it definitely can happen that way for people. It didn't happen that way for me, but I know lots of people where it has, where they've been really close friends and all of a sudden it's like, bing, let's go on a date. But here's the funny thing, Janae. It's different for guys and girls when that happens. From what I've heard from people, more often than not, for girls, it's more of a bing, like immediately, like a flip, like a light switch flipped on, and all of a sudden there's attraction. Whereas usually for guys, if they end up getting into a relationship with a girl they've been friends with for a long time, there's kind of been lingering feelings there the whole time, but they've hidden them, and they've and
Mm.
they've played the friend card because they don't want to lose the friendship or because they're playing the long game. I feel like that's way more common in that scenario when it comes to guys, is that they've had feelings the whole time, but they've hidden them. And so once the girl finally reciprocates, it's like, heck yeah. Any thoughts on that?
You know, that makes sense because I thought you were gonna say because like you I feel like I've seen when guys when they're friends and it takes a while, like usually the guy just will never come around. You know, like it takes forever.
Hmm.
But like that they never this makes sense what you're saying. If a guy is actually interested in a girl but the girl's not interested, he'll just stay friends until maybe one day she switches and he's like, "Great, I'm here for this." I think in the past I've seen guys and girls be friends and the girl was interested in him and he just took forever to come around and he never
Mm.
really does. Like it's just like not there. So in my head I'm like, I think in my head, I don't know if that's true, but I think that guys have attraction or they know if they like somebody way faster. Like
I would agree.
and if it's not there at the beginning, I don't think it's gonna show up later. But I think for women, well, at least for me, apparently I can wait 2 years and then all of a sudden I'll like somebody. So that's happened twice where I like
Well,
somebody like that.
the reason that I see for that difference, that subtle difference, is that typically guys have more of a initial like physical attraction sense. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know, like they know whether or not they're attracted physically, and oftentimes that's kind of like the first question they ask themselves. Um, and then they're like, "Oh, I wonder if she could also become a best friend." You know, whereas I think oftentimes for girls, they kind of, not always, right, but there's more of an emotional thing that needs to happen first before the physical attraction can like like you said,
Yeah.
now I want to kiss you. Like, you
Yeah.
know what I mean?
Yeah.
There was an emotional thing that preceded that in knowing him for a long time, and then like finally having kind of an emotional like, oh, he's here for me. Okay, now I'm attracted, right? I've
Yeah.
heard that story from several girls. I don't know that I've ever heard a guy tell me that he had that happen, because guys typically know if they're physically attracted right off the bat, and
Yeah.
now they want to figure out if there's compatibility in other areas as well,
Yeah, it
right?
seems a little reversed. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
how it goes. I
Yeah.
mean there have been guys that I see and I'm like immediately physically attracted to them, but
Yeah.
then, like those are usually type oneers for me and they just it just dies out. Like there's
Okay.
not substance there and then I'm like why did I engage with that? I didn't enjoy
Yeah.
any of that, you know. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
there is the high highs, but then there's the low lows. Those, oh, this is why I brought it up, is because those are the ones I have anxious attachment with. I found that the ones that are in my group one that I'm like immediately attracted to, those are the ones that I'm
Mm.
like, why haven't they texted me? And I'm like freaking out about it. Those are my
Mm.
anxious attachment ones. And then group two and three are my avoidant attachment ones. Those are the ones that I'm like,
Oh.
and I take forever to respond. I kind of maybe am interested. I've been a terrible person in the past and left breadcrumbs, but I haven't been convinced. And so those are my avoidant attachment ones.
Wow. Way to identify way to identify that. I think that's so valuable to have like identified the specific scenarios that tend to lead toward one extreme or the other. And it's not to say that either scenario is bad. I mean, healthy relationships can blossom very quickly and very slowly, right? I think the next thing to figure out is what part of those two different scenarios tends to be the trigger, right? That
Yes, like what's the belief
triggers the
system under there? Yeah,
uh-huh.
I was wanting
Yeah.
to talk about that too because I think there's two, I mean, there's probably quite a few, but I do think they stem from two different worries. So
Mm-hmm.
I think in group one, with the immediate attraction, the ones that I feel anxious with, these guys, they're usually the popular kid in school. They're like the center of attention. They're the really handsome, funny, charismatic, charming, just like superstars. You know, they're kind of like the superstars at school.
Okay.
Um, and I think that I'm not, I think that I'm not good enough for that or interesting enough for that.
Mm.
And I have proved that over and over again. I mean, that story in my head, I've chosen the people that are going to prove that story. So I
Mm.
think there's the first thought process is I'm not good enough for these high, amazing guys. They'll never be fully interested in me or want me. And then the second thing that I discovered underneath as well, this one what shocked me. I read How to Avoid Falling in Love with a Jerk. And as
That's
I
a good
was
book.
reading it, I was like, I am the jerk. It is me. I am the problem. Like Taylor Swift. Because I realized underneath everything, I knew that this kind of guy was not going to stay committed to me. Like
Mm.
I knew that he wasn't going to be interested long term. And I discovered that I didn't want a long-term relationship either. I was like afraid of commitment.
Mm.
Um, because I was afraid of marriage and unhealthy relationship. I was afraid of being stuck in an unhealthy marriage. And if I end up in an unhealthy marriage, I would become mean or abusive. I would leave or I would cheat. Like in my head, I'm like, if I'm stuck in a marriage that I don't want to be in, I'm gonna end up breaking everybody's hearts involved.
Mm.
Um, and that also lives under the avoidant um tendencies that I have. But other stuff do as well. So I think that was like I think subconsciously I was like, this guy is never gonna like me fully, but we'll have fun. So I'll go out with it. You know, like I'll hang out with him, I'll have a great time. But
Mm.
luckily I don't have to be in a long-term relationship. And then the other part of it's like, I'm not good enough. Even if he wanted me, I wouldn't be good enough. You know, those are the two thoughts that I think I have for my anxious.
Interesting. Okay. Can I share an analogy that just came to mind?
Yeah.
Um, and really, really basic, but the analogy is that of breathing, um, and anxious, secure, and avoidant. And it's almost like it's almost like if we're anxious, we're hyperventilating. It's like too much. You know what I mean? Like, and like that can cause real problems if you hyperventilate. If we're
Mhm.
avoidant, it's like we take a couple of deep breaths and then we hold our breath for a while and we get close to passing out, right? And both of those are extremes and they might be exciting, it might get our heart racing, but ultimately what we want is a steady in and out. You know what I mean? And that's the secure, and it might seem boring, but anyway, that just came to mind as you were explaining
I
some of
love
these
that. Yeah.
feelings surrounding the anxious stuff. So I wanted to make sure I jotted that down, but um, yeah, that's cool that you've identified those specific beliefs surrounding group one and how those beliefs are making you feel anxious in those
Mhm.
situations. Um,
Yeah. I think in my head with this group one as well, I just think they're better than me, and I don't think that I would keep their attention for a long
hmm,
time. And so
okay,
I think that might be a little splinter there is like, I'm not good enough for them, for the guys that I
okay.
really want.
So here's my question. What's the truth then? Because like you said earlier, these things are twisted. I don't know if you've already kind of processed this, but I would be curious to know whether you did or process
This
some of it
one is
right
still
now.
here. I haven't figured this one out because I did
Okay.
figure out the commitment problems of like I of learning some of the fears of marriage, and I'm still working through those, but I feel a little bit better about those because I actually worked with your mom, and she
Hmm.
and I were able to work through some of the fears of like marriage, and
Cool.
so some of that has cleared up, but I have not worked yet on like, let's say I see the greatest basketball player in all time and I'm like, they'll never be interested in me. That's the first thing I'm gonna think, right? Is like they'd never want me. And it's like, why? Why no? Why no? So that I that one I haven't, because I think even if I was able to get their attention for a little bit, I don't think I'd keep their attention. And it might actually not be because of who I am, it's because of who they are.
There's
And
definitely some truth there, I think. Go ahead and finish.
well, I was just thinking I don't know what is in me that is attracted to the unavailable. There's still a little bit of remnant there. Um that I find it attractive. I mean, maybe it is this, maybe it is how media taught me of this up and high highs and low lows and about this chase and
Hmm.
hunter and unicorn. Maybe that's like what it is. But there definitely is something that I'm developing, I think, a little bit more of the gift of discernment of like seeing somebody and being like, wow, we would have a really rocky relationship. It would be fun for a minute, but it would also be not fun. But then I also feel sad that I'm like, why can't I find somebody that I feel excited about that's healthy? Because
You
that's the problem,
you can and you will.
Well,
You
I
can
kind
and you
of have,
will.
but even then it's a little different. Yeah.
Yeah.
That it's just a little challenging in that way.
So here's a question. You said one thing that I want to address. You said I might be able to get their attention, but I doubt that I can keep it. What does that remind you of? Is there anything that reminds you of in the past?
Like one of my memories.
Memories, the way you grew up. It could be, stuff with siblings or parents. It could be, childhood friends. It could be early romances. It could be your teacher at school. Like, were there times when you felt like, yeah, I might be able to get someone's attention, but I can't keep it?
Let me see what comes to my mind when I think about that. I don't have anything specific coming to my brain. I do know that I was raised in a high performance, high praise family. So like when I performed well, I received a lot of praise. And that is the first thing that's coming to me. I think maybe that's where I get it from.
Mm,
Of having to be the one that is impressive.
mm. That's a really heavy thing to carry in or the romantic relationship scenario. And I'm sure in other scenarios as well, but like feeling like in order to be of value to someone else in a romantic relationship that you have to be impressive sounds exhausting. That sounds so tiring and so unrealistic. Like, you know what I mean? Like, yeah, it can
Yeah.
work for the first couple dates, and it's like, oh, this person's so impressive and they're awesome, and but feeling like you have to be superhuman and stay superhuman in order to like gain someone's long-term commitment and affection is impossible. No human can do that
Yeah. Okay.
because
This
we're
is,
all just
yeah.
flawed humans, right?
Yes. Yes. I think the thought that's coming to me is like, oh, I'm not good enough for group one. For my group
Mm,
oneers, the people that I just like.
okay.
It's this thought process of I'm not good enough. I think maybe I had been seeking attention from one of my caregivers and it just never was good enough. I think that's
Mm,
what it, like, I got attention when I did well. Um, and if I wasn't, I got attention, but it was not of a positive. It wasn't, it was like, why aren't you getting an A plus? Let's sit down and do
mm,
this until you get it perfect, until it's perfect. That
yeah.
that was a very, very common thing for me in
Mm,
my, at least in my perception of in my childhood of doing it until I got it perfect.
yeah. So, is there a way that you can see that part of your past differently now with your adult eyes and your understanding of what how you've seen friends start to raise their kids and things like that?
Um, like how that thought process of getting it perfect might affect me, or how.
Or is there some truth that can untwist things a little bit?
Mhm.
Because when you're a little kid, you see things a certain way. And we carry that with us because we're still a little kid inside. Someone once told me that you know I'm not my current age. I'm for example, I'm not just 29. I'm 29 and 28 and 26 and 20
Mm,
and 15 and 5 and
yeah.
2. Like we carry it with us, right? But the nice thing is we can address those past experiences with some of the outer layers and the new knowledge that we've received, and I think that can help bring some truth to untwist the belief
Yeah.
that we've carried on a younger level.
Yeah, I am the third child out of four.
Okay.
And I think part of this idea of God wants everyone else to be happy, but not me, I think it came from that. Because,
Mm,
or part of it, because as I'm thinking, I don't think my siblings, I don't know if they felt the same pressure that I did. Um, maybe they did, but I think in my head, I looked around and saw them receiving. I mean, they were just existing as they were, and I think in my head they didn't have to do anything to just exist. But in
mm.
my head, I had to sing well and do my piano well and get my good grades. I had to
Just to
shine
be
to
acceptable.
exist. Yeah.
Mm,
And so I think it might land where I was because I mean I was not just the middle child, I was the second middle child. So I had to really thrive, to
mm.
be seen, I think. Um,
Interesting. There we are again with kind of the two opposite ends of the spectrum. Either I'm the best, or I'm like lower than the lowest low. There,
mhm.
there, there is no just existing in the middle for me. Either I have to perform and earn being normal and praised and loved, um, or I'm failing and I'm worse than the worst. Is that kind of what you're saying?
Yes. And I think I have been way comfier. I felt more, I felt safer and more comfy in this lower state, like where I'm like, I'm just gonna hang out with people who won't judge me. And so then certain people that I hang out with may not be the most like influenced or maybe not have the same values that I do, but I know that they're not gonna like judge me. Maybe some of
Mm,
the guys that I've dated actually have been that way too, where I'm like, I feel completely safe to be here because I don't have to be perfect here. I can be
mm,
messy, you know?
mm.
Um, yeah, so I think there's definitely these, but even then, when I date those people, or when I spend time with people who I don't share the same core values with, it gets hard for me over time because I'm like, wait, this isn't who I am either, like fully, you know? So I think having that balance, bringing it to the center of being like, I'm gonna need to shed this perfectionist thought process. And I have been working on it. I thought I was a recovering perfectionist, but apparently I'm
We all
still
are.
knee deep in it because I'm like, oh, I don't want anyone to see me unless I'm excelling, unless I'm better than you.
Mm,
You know, like that's when I'm like, I'm safe to be seen is when I'm actually perfect. But is that's why I have a problem being vulnerable, and that's why I'll be single
mm,
forever. It's because I was waiting for this perfect version of myself so that when I enter relationship, I'm safe. Because
mm.
if even if they were to attack me, it's like, wait, I'm perfect, so clearly you're in the wrong, you know?
Oh yeah.
Okay, so I've been waiting to be
Man.
perfect so that I can be safe. Because when I'm perfect, they I'm safe. They
Yeah.
can't critique anything.
Yeah. Interesting. Waiting to be perfect to be safe. Huh.
Yeah, I've been waiting until I'm perfect to engage in relationships so that I'm safe.
Yeah.
So perfect equals safety.
Mm.
That's a big one. That's the big one.
Yeah. So what are some truths that can come in and untwist things? Because you said a couple things that weren't quite true, right? I mean,
Yeah, yeah,
they feel 100% true right
yeah,
now,
yeah, yeah,
but
yeah, yeah, yeah.
you said
No,
a couple things that were like, okay, that's not quite true. Like,
yes. Okay, so that first one, perfection is well, I think that is true because if I, okay, so that's one that I need to untwist. Here's the thing. Oh gosh, this is another one. It's just leading me to more untruths. It's just going down this little rabbit hole. Okay, this perfect to be safe is also connected to nobody will love me
hmm,
as I am. Like nobody has the capability of loving me the way that I want to be loved. No one can do that. And that's one that I have discovered recently, but I haven't worked through. But I'm like, nobody has the capability. Everybody's going to let me down.
hmm,
So that's kind of connected to that. Okay, so do I need to be perfect to be safe? I think that I could find a partner who, because I have friends, they will try to love me the best that they can. Maybe the need to be perfect is also that I don't have to have needs and that I'm never let down by
hmm.
others too. Because I
Interesting.
think okay, so the first part, okay, there's two things happening here. The first part, I want to be perfect so that I can't be criticized and so that people love me. Like they love perfection. So I'm like, I want to be perfect. Then I want to be desirable. I want to be whole. And then I'll be safe. That, but logically, that's twisted because we all love imperfect people. Like that's just how it is. We're all imperfect. So either we choose to love imperfect people or we won't ever love.
Yeah. To use a sports analogy, you remember middle school how there was like say basketball, there was the A team, the B team, the C team. You
You know,
remember
I never
that?
did sports, so I don't really know, but tell me. Okay.
Well,
It was 18 the
the
best.
A team was varsity, the B team was
Yeah.
junior varsity, and the C team was like you don't even have to try out.
It's community choir. Yes.
So that's the thing. Like varsity and junior varsity don't actually exist in life. There's just the C team. Like, and this is going back to the whole not feeling like you're good enough, and group one of these guys that you don't feel like you're good enough for. um, Leagues is another way to say that. They're out of my league. Leagues don't exist. They can't. We're all on the C team. It goes back to the general conference talk where the missionary's frustrated with his companion because his companion's getting up late and he's not like working very hard, and this missionary is trying to be obedient, and he's praying and he's like, God, like I'm having a hard time here. Please, help me. Like I don't know what to do. And the feeling was that the feeling and thought that came to him were, you know, elder, compared to me, the two of you really aren't that different.
Yeah.
And that's true in dating. Like we're so eager to try and like put people on a hierarchy, but you just can't. Like we're all broken. That's why we need a savior. And to be frank with you, we're all just children. Like for so long when I thought of the phrase children of God, I focused on of God. Yeah, like we're God's kids. When in reality, I think there's another piece that he wants us to understand in that phrase, and it's that we're children. Even if we're 99, the fact that we're mortal, flawed humans means that we're just kids trying to figure it out. And if we can see ourselves that way, and we can see ourselves as just normal kids trying to figure it out that don't have to be perfect yet, then it's a whole lot easier to start to see other people that way. That specific truth has helped me a ton with perfectionism. One time I was at this family reunion. We were up at a cabin with a lake in the backyard. All these nieces and nephews running around. I wasn't married yet, but my older brother had a kid that was like 5 or 6. And the rule at the lake house for the kids is you can't go into the water unless there's another adult out there watching you. And a couple kids are out in the backyard and their parents are kind of peeking out the window, making sure they're okay. And my brother, his oldest kid, who is 5 or 6, was playing with his cousin who had a flower, and she threw it into the water and the waves kind of started to carry it out further and further. And this kid kind of struggles with loss a little bit. Like if his parents give something to the thrift store, it like devastates him. And his dad knows that. And so he's watching through the window, my older brother, he's watching through the window, knowing how much of a temptation this is for his son to step into the water and grab the flower before it's too late. And he hesitates and then he steps in to grab it. And my older brother opens the door and like he's like he like says his name, right? And this little boy just turned around and immediately is just sobbing. He's like, Dad, I'm sorry. I know I should have gotten into the water. Like the flower was floating away. I was gonna lose it. Like I'm so sorry. Like don't be mad. And I was sitting there watching this tender moment, and I was just like I knew my brother was gonna forgive him. Like he's 5. he's he's literally still in driver's ed with this whole body thing. Like, how does this work? I don't know. What does this switch do? You know what I mean? Like, and so are we all. I realized in that moment, I'm like, oh, like that's me. Of course, Heavenly Father is going to forgive me when I turn around and run and say I'm sorry. This temptation. And so I don't know. I feel like that really applies to this whole perfectionist thing, because all of a sudden we're all just kids trying to figure it out on this floating rock together.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I love that. I've always felt that it was like I don't feel good about like a hierarchy or like some people are better than others. Like I'm like that doesn't sound right to me. Like there's something off about that. That's twisted.
Mm.
But in my head still I think I still was like, oh, I'm not, I won't be good enough for certain people.
Mm.
But I think it also has to do with just like a preference thing and then where they're at. I mean, it's not a reflection of me, and I understand that logically. I think emotionally though, I still am like, it's because I wasn't good enough, was it? You know?
I've been there. And
But
here's the go ahead.
it is just logic. That's what I was gonna say. I just have to repeat it to myself. Is because it's just a I just have to remind myself. No, like it's not a reflection of me if somebody's not interested in me.
Yeah. Really, number one, leagues are a lie because even if someone looks perfect, you know they got things that are imperfect about them, right? Even if they look like they just walked out of a magazine, either they're wearing a ton of makeup, or they snore really loud, or they're super messy at home, or they have some other annoying quirks. There's always something that as soon as you see it, all of a sudden you're like, they're just a kid too. Just like me. Right.
Yeah.
And so, and there's really obvious, I mean, if we're talking about physical appearances, there's really obvious examples that leagues are a lie. I mean, there's some actors that are not attractive looking at all that date and marry people that are very attractive looking. Take Jack Black, for example. Not your most attractive looking guy, but he's dated and married, as far as I've heard anyway. I've never actually looked him up, but from what I've heard, like, yeah, he's dated models and maybe even married models. And so again, there's lots of different ways to prove that, like, we're really all just right there on the same level. But the other thing I was going to say is that um, it's easy for us to take it personally when someone rejects us, when in reality, it was just a mismatched level of interest. And that is the norm in life. How many people are there that you wouldn't have a matched level of interest romantically in this world? Most of them, almost 90 something percent, 99 something percent of them, right? It's the exceptions once in a while where it's like, oh, like, there's enough levels here where there's equal interest that we're going to have a healthy relationship. And those are the exceptions that do happen. They do happen and they do occur, but the rule is mismatched level of interest. So we shouldn't be surprised or beat ourselves up when someone expresses the fact that there's a mismatched level of interest, because that's really all rejection is. When I hear the word rejection, I think of someone on a pedestal and someone down below, and the person on a pedestal being like, "No, you're not good enough for me. Get the hence." Right? But that's not what's happening. We're on a level playing field, and one person is just saying, "You know what? This is a really normal interaction," meaning there's not a matched level of interest here, right? Sometimes it's both people saying it. Um, yeah. Any other thoughts on that?
That is awesome. That is just so awesome. I love that perspective, and I think I'm gonna have to create some affirmations to help me repeat that and remember that every day, like absolutely that we're all the same. And then it did point out to me something that I'm going to ponder as well of it. Yes. Okay. So all of a sudden these groups, as I've categorized them, are able to merge a little bit more. Like if everybody's just the same, like if all these categories can kind of, but there is like a break off. And I've noticed an unhealthy tendency in an unhealthy thing that I'm going to have to ponder. And that is this kind of competitiveness where I think that's the phrase for it. But if there's somebody that doesn't like me, I'm like, why not? Let me try. I almost see it as like a challenge of like, okay, well, let me try, let me convince you. I don't know what that is. Like I
Oh,
see it
I'm
as
going
like,
to win over.
yeah,
Yeah.
but it's not because I actually want the guy. It's because this is terrible. It's because like I want to be able to make anybody fall in love with me. That's terrible. I'm so sorry. I told you I am the jerk. I'm a horrible person. I think in my head though, I'm like, I will get any person to love me. Maybe it's the people pleaser. What is that?
Uh, I've definitely been there, Janae. I've thought those exact same things in the past. Like, oh, I can get anyone to like me. Like, no, I can't. Most people would never like have a match. I'm just a human like they are. What do I think I am? Superhero? Like, no, I'm human, and that's normal, and that's great, and that's lovable. Um,
Mm,
but here's the other thing that's at play, that's at work here, and this is something that I think might help with that group one. Usually, um, usually if we don't feel good enough for someone, and we've kind of put them on a pedestal, and they're running away, usually going back to that unicorn thing, there's there's a dynamic here that's happening that we got to be really careful of. I fell into it several times. The last time was the hardest of all. But the dynamic is, if I tend to be anxious around this person and they tend to be avoidant, it's like it's magnetic, because what they want is to be chased, and what I want is to chase. And so there's this
mm,
compatibility there that makes it really fun and exciting. And, it's like they'll kind of dangle a carrot in front of your nose and, like, come get me, like,
mhm,
and you're like, oh, I will, and it's like, and it feels so exciting, and it feels so right, honestly, in some ways. But what's really happening is an avoidant and an anxious um, habit group of habits have clashed, and where there seems to be a little bit of compatibility, the rest of their habits are completely incompatible. Because, like I said, you're not going to have a healthy relationship with a hunter and a unicorn. Like, you have to, like, want each other. And so I guess what I'm trying to say here, Janae, is that it would be my guess that a lot of the guys that you've categorized in group one have probably struggled with avoidant attachment styles.
yes, that is very, very, very true. They really
Maybe,
do.
yeah, maybe not 100%. We don't know their whole story. They could be like you, where they kind of swing back and forth. Who knows, right? But at least in the scenarios where you've been involved and you've felt anxious, they've probably felt avoidant and struggled with some of those tendencies. And maybe, your proactiveness has triggered some memories in them. You're good. Maybe it's triggered some memories in them of how they feel like committed relationships are unsafe, because maybe their parents, had an abusive relationship, or who knows what
Mhm,
contributed to their avoidant attachment style. But um, aside from the whole, like, leveling the playing field thing that we were talking about, I think this other fact of, like, understanding the habits that are interacting and clashing and how they're going to um, affect each other really, really helped me a lot to finally stop chasing the unicorns and to open up my eyes to what I really wanted, which was another hunter. And that analogy, it's imperfect. It falls apart when you ask the question, well, what is the anxious person? A really, really stressed out hunter? Maybe. I don't know. But I feel like it works really good for talking about the avoidance side of things.
mhm, mhm. Yeah, that I love that. I love that so much, to organize that in my head. And they really have been very avoidant. Yeah, I definitely have been, like, my immediate attraction is generally to avoidant men,
Hmm.
emotionally unavailable. And I think somewhere in my psyche it was because I knew that they wouldn't stay around, and I think I wasn't really ready for a long-term relationship, or I was too scared of one. So I think
Hmm.
that, like, subconsciously I was, like, attracted to these men because I knew that these kind guys and great guys who are actually, like, pursuing me, they'd be here for a long-term relationship. And I was like, I don't want any of that.
No
I'm not ready
thanks,
for
not what
that.
I'm about.
No, I only want heartbreak and avoidance. Thank you. And they wouldn't do that. So I but I think now that I'm like getting a little bit older and working through some of these things, I am, I think that's where my, like when those switches flip all of a sudden with these guys, I think in my head I have like a little bit of hope where I'm like, okay, maybe we could have like a healthy relationship. Maybe this would be fun and healthy,
Mm.
you know?
Mm.
And maybe I'm coming to the um conclusion that that's what I want and I believe in it. So I think it definitely is like more of an internal thing for me where I'm at, like if I'm ready for it or not.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that makes total sense. It really does sound like you're taking leaps and bounds toward feeling um feeling balanced, you know?
We're trying to get there. Thank you. Thank you so much for your help because this is so, yeah, there's a few things that I'm going to just be pondering. I have like a few more splinters that I've discovered. And then I think I'm going to be thinking about the avoidant attachment because I think the anxious is starting to become a little bit clearer to me.
Mm.
Um, I think I have probably a few more in the anxious side of things, but I think that's becoming clearer. And then I think the next the next stage is going to be the avoidant of like, why do I demonstrate avoidant tendencies with some of these people? So
Yeah.
that'll be interesting. Yeah. Thank you so much, Nate. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Janae, for not only being willing to say the things that everyone's scared to say, but for doing it in such a fun way. I love your sense of humor and your jokes that you bring into this because they make it so much more fun for me to have, these kinds of conversations. They lighten the mood, but I know that it's also going to be appreciated by people that are listening to this, and
Oh,
they're
that's
like, "Oh
great.
man, like I relate to that. That's heavy," and then all of a sudden they're like, "Oh, that's funny," and there's a release of pressure there, and so yeah,
Well,
I'm
it's
just grateful
how
for
I
you.
cope with trauma. So
And
it's
it
all
can
healthy.
it can actually be a healthy thing, in
Yeah.
moderation, like all things. But Elder Richard G. Scott once said that humor, he said appropriate humor can be a pressure release for or a release valve for the pressures of life.
Mm,
And I've seen that to be true, and so that's one of the
I love
things I
that.
love about our conversations. And I'm excited to hear back on what you discover between now and next time, and let's be in touch.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. And wow. Yes, I will tell you, I'll give you all the updates next time too. Because I realized, wow, I didn't even get to some of the updates that I was like, these would be good. Yeah, we'll discuss them next time. We'll discuss them
Okay,
next time too.
sounds good. Thanks for coming on
Oh,
today,
thank
Janae.
you. Thanks so much, Nate.
Okay, my friends, thanks for tuning in. Be sure to check out more of my content and services at natejclark.podia, that's podia.com. And I'll catch you next time.